Now, the Bank of England have warned of the serious and growing threat to stability by any cyber attack to the UK financial system. The Financial Policy Committee has said that firms need to ensure that cyber risk to their business is seen as a strategic priority. Joining us in the studio now is Mann, the Managing Director of an international cybersecurity company, to tell us more about cybersecurity and cyber attacks. So, Graham, why do we all need to be worried about this?
The growing threat from cybersecurity has extended to not only the financial sector, but all over British business. And corporate UK really does need to spend a lot more resources and a lot more financial resources to ensure that not only do they protect their own business data, but they also protect the consumer data that they are custodians of.
But, I mean, obviously you would say that. You run a company that they would use to try and acquire that protection. Obviously you think it's important. But why is it that kind of customers should be worried about, companies not looking after their data properly?
Well, you've only got to look at the TalkTalk, and there's many others, the whole Ashley Madison debacle, VTech, which is a recent, quite scary one because a lot of children's data was involved in that particular attack. The attacks that are being undertaken on these organizations aren't particularly fancy or technically difficult. And so people can very easily get into these organizations. They can very easily take what information they're looking for. And we do need to spend more time and money to protect that, because it's not necessarily the company's information. If you take VTech, there's a lot of children's information who are buying things online for their games console. There were photographs of them, there were communications between them and their parents, and when they put that kind of information in the hands of people like VTech, they rather expect that it's going to be protected. And in a lot of cases, that information is fairly easily obtainable without too much in the way of effort. If you take something like TalkTalk, it was 16, 17-year-olds that had access to that kind of information. That's kind of scary.
It is, but I know this sounds like a daft question, but why do these hackers want this stuff? What are they going to do with it?
There are lots of drivers, right from the nefarious nation states, right down to people like those 16-year-olds who tend to go after this type of data just because they can. It's the old script kiddies. Many, many years ago, they were referred to people, young people in their bedrooms who are typing away, breaking into organizations just because it's fun. Oh, I'm in, and look at all the information I've got. But there are more serious sides to things in that can also be companies or people that want to use that sort of information for all sorts of other purposes. Who they might want to sell it, they may want to obtain the information so they can scam the people afterwards. There's a lot of drivers, and money in this type of thing is huge. We're talking about billions of dollars that this data's worth. So it's a huge industry.
So you're saying that companies need to spend more time, more effort and more money on protecting themselves. But is there anything that consumers can do? Should we be pressuring our companies? Should we, if we had been, for example, a TalkTalk or a VTech customer, should we walk away from them? How can we send a message that it's important to us that, our things are looked after?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's very hard from a consumer standpoint to do very much about this, because you entrust your data to these organizations. If you fill in forms, you look into, like TalkTalk, you look and get a mobile phone. You have to provide them with a certain amount of information, and you kind of assume that they're going to look after it. But a lot of this information is often really just transient information, and so people like TalkTalk could actually delete it, because they don't need all of that kind of info. So they could delete it, but it's easy to store it, it's cheap. And they could also architect their networks in such a way that that information is quite difficult to obtain. Than the way they do at the moment. It's easy just to put into one big database, and that's fairly accessible. So I think there has to be a sea change within corporate UK that says we really do need to make sure that when we're looking after consumer data, we take as much care of it as we possibly can to ensure that it doesn't get out into to nefarious hands. But there isn't very much that the consumer can do, except for when they do lose it, they then have to be very careful that their bank accounts, that scammers who will call up and say, you were a TalkTalk customer, give me your various sort of details because we're looking into that and just making sure your information is safe. That's often where the real danger is with these sort of attacks. It's not always the person that has stolen the data, but it can be scammers afterwards that are just looking to feed off that initial attack, and that could be millions. So,
Graham, thank you so much for coming in.
You're very welcome.
It's scary stuff. Thank you.
It is a little, isn't it?